Have you wondered about living elsewhere after you retire? Well, we have, almost daily. As you know, it's not an overnight decision. Hi, this is Gil.
And Jean.
Of Retire There, a podcast about places to consider living in during your retirement. We started this show for selfish reasons, because we will be retiring in the next few years, but we're not sure where. Then a light bulb went off in Jean's head. What are others doing? With so many baby boomers retiring, there must be many relocating. So we decided, let's connect with them and pick their brains. But first, a little background. I'm Asian, born in Brazil, and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm an engineer turned attorney and practicing higher ed law at a college who loves working with students, faculty, and staff.
I am not Asian. Born and raised in Long Island, New York, a place I always wanted to leave. I am a law librarian working in a court who loves his job. We've lived in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, New York for many years, and have been thinking about our future home.
So we'll be speaking to folks from around the country, and now around the world, who have moved to venues of their dreams and more. And we will share their stories, and we will share their intimate secrets.
No.
I'm just kidding, Jean. But we will provide information that you may not find anywhere else. So stay tuned. Hola, de nuevo. Today we are joined by Karen and Richard McCann, who have a retirement home in Seville, España. Seville is the largest city in southern Spain. Well, you know, I took 3 years of Spanish. I have to use it whenever I can. Yeah. Now, at this point, I normally offer some background about the venue. But since our guests are so well versed, I would not be doing it justice, so I will defer to the experts. First, background about our guests.
Karen was born in Palo Alto, California, and raised mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area, what's now Silicon Valley. She attended the University of California at Berkeley. Her career took her to Boston, California, and Cleveland, holding positions as a writer, graphic designer, journalist, corporate communications director, and marketing consultant. Ooh. During their 35 years of marriage, Richard and Karen visited more than 60 countries together. And of all of those places, Seville kept calling them back. Vacations there grew longer and longer until 2004, when they decided to make it their home for a year. Now they spend about half the year there and the other half in their cottage in Marin County, California, or traveling. Karen notes, America is something you have to stay in practice for. And we don't want to lose our touch. Living and traveling abroad filled their lives with stories, which eventually grew into 2 best-selling travel memoirs and a host of blog posts, interviews, and articles. We will include all this information in the show notes. Here's what they've learned. No, you absolutely do not have to settle for boring, predictable travel at any age. In fact, you don't have to settle for a boring, predictable life. If, like Karen, you spent your childhood secretly longing to live overseas, maybe this is the time to start exploring the world for yourself.
Richard was born in New Jersey on D-Day. His childhood was spent in New Jersey, New York City, and Boston. After graduating from Providence College, he served in the Navy, then received an MBA from George Washington University. A career in hospital administration, he became CEO of a multiple hospital health center in Oakland, California, and then at another larger system in Cleveland, Ohio, where he oversaw 5 hospitals, nursing homes, and a school of management. Ooh, talk about intimidation, Jean.
Whoa.
I told you, we are not bringing on any more CEOs. Okay. He rounded out his work life as chairman of a health insurance subsidiary of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Ohio. After taking early retirement, Richard and Karen formed a consulting company serving corporate clients in Silicon Valley. On a volunteer basis, they provided business consulting services in Kenya, Bosnia, Mexico, El Salvador, and the Republic of Georgia, helping micro enterprises achieve sustainability in struggling economies. In Seville, he continues to provide consulting and mentoring for young entrepreneurs on an informal basis. Richard has a passion for travel. The McCanns enjoy taking journeys lasting 3 to 5 months, traveling on trains and other public transportation, largely through Eastern Europe. In 2019, they undertook a 5-month trip dubbed the Mediterranean Comfort Food Tour.
Yum.
Oh, that's what we definitely need to do. Put that on the bucket list. meeting and filming cooks in tiny bistros and home kitchens throughout Greece, Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, Bosnia, Croatia, Italy, France, and Spain. Ooh.
I'm a few of those.
I would be gaining at least 2 pounds in every city. During the pandemic, Richard took UC Berkeley's Science of Happiness course, and now they're planning a happiness tour to the places the United Nations rates highest on the scale of contentment, which, somewhat surprisingly, says Rich, is mostly the Nordic countries. Yes, I have Finland on our list also, Jean. So, Karen and Richard, we are thrilled to have you on Retire There. Jean and I have anointed you our mentors. What rich lives you've enjoyed. Seriously. We are brimming with questions, but if we may, let's start with Seville. Your background hinted as to the why, but if you could walk us through your journey, we would be forever grateful.
Rich, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think I'd like to start saying that at one point we were living in Ohio, and I had retired, and we had an ideal life there. You know, we had a nice house, we lived on a river, we had good friends. It was everything that we had worked for. But we also realized during that period of time that our lives were starting to get smaller and smaller, and we weren't doing as much as we had done while I was working. I went to Karen and I said, you know, we have an ideal life here, but maybe it's time that we started looking at a different way of living and living much larger than we are today. Based on that, we decided that we would go to Spain and just take a look at it and see what it was like. And that really is the beginning of the story.
Well, that makes it sound far more organized than it actually was, because we actually stumbled into Spain. We were sort of having these vague thoughts, sure, but friends invited us to meet them in Italy, and we arranged a vacation. Then some other friends wanted to have us come and visit them because they were in Spain. And we said, well, Spain really isn't on our radar, but sure, why not? So we stopped in there, and at the last minutes, our friends had to cancel. So it was just the two of us for a week in Spain, and we absolutely fell in love with it. It wasn't just the weather. It was so California-like. You know, it was just and since as a fourth generation Californian, I felt right at home. Palm trees, everybody speaking Spanish. It was great. We suddenly realized that there was something here in southern Spain that we weren't seeing in other places. And it took us a long time to sort of identify what it was, but it was a kind of vibrancy, particularly of the street life. Everybody in southern Spain lives out on the streets, and the bars and cafes are always full. You spend a lot of time in very, very casual social situations. That really spoke to us. It seemed like a lifestyle that would draw us in very easily. As it proved, that was correct. That's what happened.
When you say it was California-like, I assume you mean more like Northern California than Southern California. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, it was beautiful, warm, sunny weather that could have been in Northern or Southern California. Beautiful coastal drive. So I remember driving to Marbella, which is where we were going, along the coast in a convertible, as it happens. And the palm trees were waving, and
Wow.
It was just perfectly heavenly. We had not really expected it to be quite so charming quite so quickly. And then when you get to places like Seville, the architecture is just breathtaking. It really is. You feel like you're in a movie at first. Ancient castles and gorgeous old cathedrals and convents and monasteries and palaces. Everything is called a palace. A large house is a palace. We live in a palace.
Wow, nice.
An apartment in a palace.
Mm-hmm.
So the palacios are everywhere, ancient buildings, you know, with all of the attendant difficulties that come with old buildings. The atmosphere is so rich visually that it's really a treat to be there. And that was another thing that attracted us.
Is it one of these cities that mixes old and new architecture well, or is it mostly just old?
They do the old architecture beautifully. They're terrible at the new architecture. A few years ago, they built what they wanted to be sort of the Eiffel Tower of Spain, this thing that looks like a set of giant mushrooms rising 50 feet in the air. It's made out of wood. It's absolutely hideous. It's very non-functional, but it is a great landmark. So we always meet people in front of it. We say, meet us by the giant mushrooms. They go, oh yeah, that place. It has some other name, but nobody calls it anything but the setas, which is Spanish for mushrooms.
Sounds like a Gaudi.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah, no, not nearly as nice as Gaudi stuff. Yeah, people are selling it.
It's funny when you say Seville, I think of that building. of that structure. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So-
I know. Sadly, it's the emblem of our city. It is, in my personal opinion, the least attractive building in the city, except for maybe a few dreary high rises. It was designed by committee, cast of thousands, cost of millions, a German architect who supposedly never even been to Seville. It was just not a smoothly run project from the get-go.
I think going back to the question of why Seville, I think it had a lot to do with the fact that I grew up in the 1950s where neighborhoods were really important, where neighbors took care of one another, where people met on the street and they weren't rushing from one place to another. And that's what we found there. If you ask someone to come and repair your house for some reason, they may show up late or they may not show up at all because they met a friend on the street and the friend said, let's go out and have a cup of coffee. And they went out and had a cup of coffee. And they said, oh yeah, but we just got tied up. We figured you were doing the same thing. So that's sort of the attitude over there. Patience is a real key issue for the Spaniards. You're not rushed. Nobody in the stores are rushed. The woman behind the counter may be talking to her best friend on the phone, and you wait until she's finished before you can pay your bill.
Yeah, we try to look at it as a Zen experience.
So at some point, you decided that you wanted to spend more than a month there. I presume that looking for a home was part of that journey. Can you tell us how you decided on the home? Is it something you rent or did you buy?
Well, we rent for various reasons, some having to do with taxes, some having to do with just the convenience of not having to maintain a house in a foreign country and getting people to come and work. And as Karen explained, it's in an old Palacio. We live in an apartment. There are 4 other apartments there. It's right in the center of the city. It's very convenient for us. We have great neighbors, all Spaniards. We've just loved every minute of it. And it's one of the reasons I think that we fell in love with the city was because of the apartment.
We had a few simple criteria when we were looking. We wanted to be near a park because we were bringing our dog over. We wanted outdoor space because Rich is a big gardener.
And we didn't want to live in the Alfalfa Plaza.
Yes, we didn't want to live in the Alfalfa district because it was famous at the time for what they called botellones, which are drinking parties that the young people do all night long in the street. And I didn't think that it sounded so great to have 500 or 600 drunken youths under my window every night.
No.
It's since been outlawed.
It's since been outlawed. Well, now with COVID, I think they're observing it even. So we had these like really clear ideas of what we wanted. And so this woman was showing us around and she said, well, I have one more place. She said it's in Alfalfa. It doesn't have any outdoor space.
And it's not near the park.
It's nowhere near the park, but it's kind of a nice place. You might want to look at it. And before I could get the words out of my mouth, no, we're not interested, Rich said, well, why don't we just take a look? And we walked in and that was it. Absolutely gorgeous. It's got high ceilings. It overlooks an old church, the roof of an old church. So all we see is just this lovely crumbling architecture.
Nice.
And it's central enough and it's not right in the center of the tourist area. I mean, it's everything. It's such a perfect place. And it's actually, by Seville standards, a fairly roomy apartment. So we have everybody over for Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is nice. It's a part of our social life.
How big is it? Like a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom?
It's a 3-bedroom. It's 136 square meters.
I'm trying to do that.
So
3 bedrooms.
it's about 1,200 square feet.
That's very nice.
Big, yeah.
And is it walkable to, or do you need a car? Is it walkable to?
We don't have a car.
We don't have a car. We hardly ever set foot in a car.
We don't have a dishwasher. We don't have a television. We don't have a lot of the things that people here say they couldn't live without. We don't have a garbage disposal. We adjust to that. Quite frankly, we don't miss it at all. And especially the car we don't miss.
Right.
So it's a walkable city.
Yeah, It's flat and it's safe. I mean, if I'm out having a drink with a friend and, things are running late there. So it might be midnight or 1 by the time I'm walking home by myself. I mean, usually Rich and I are out together, but sometimes I'm by myself walking home and I know it's a safe city. I mean, it's still a city and anything could happen and I pay attention a little bit. Seville is rated one of the safest cities around and they really work hard because everybody pays attention to everybody else. One little neighborhood after another. And people are always looking out the window. People are on the street. If I see somebody coming towards me on the street, my first instinct is, oh, good, there's somebody else on the street. Not, oh my God, this person could mug me. It's really a different flavor to it. I once had a guy try to pickpocket me. He reached into my purse and I had not zipped it fully. So he was trying to reach his hand in and I caught him and I turned around and started yelling at him. And the woman behind him started yelling at him too. So the two of us are sitting there screaming at this guy. And Rich is looking at me like, what? The whole thing. No, I mean, everybody engages. You are not an invisible cipher. You are not invisible to them. They know you're there. Oh, and here's the other thing. They respect old people.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Imagine, get your head around this.
Yeah.
Kids are taught from the cradle that you treat your parents and grandparents with respect. Now, they go through all the usual teenage stuff, don't get me wrong. But the grandmother and grandfather are always taken care of, are taken out on the street by the youngsters. And it's done without any sarcasm or snarkiness. It is done cheerfully, and it is considered a family duty, and there's just no question about it.
To go back to the murders, to go
Were
back to the safety.
about the murders?
To go back to the safety.
Did I miss that part?
Pickpocketing, murdering,
Yeah, there have been 14 murders in Seville since the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, we have that in a weekend in San Francisco.
Yeah. On a slow weekend.
On a slow weekend.
I love the respect for old people. I mean, I was raised to revere the elderly, and I think that's just so special because they have so much knowledge. Growing up in my traditional, Chinese household, we were not allowed to mistreat our grandparents, although my grandmother and I often went at it. But
Between equals is fine. It's that sneering contempt that I know a lot of American kids that have a really hard time talking to me.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older, because they think that I'm just an alien from another planet and couldn't possibly have anything to contribute to the conversation that they'd want to hear.
Right.
And I'm not a particularly boring person. I can usually hold my own in a conversation. But these kids are like, who is she and why do I have to get stuck next to her at dinner?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, along those lines, our friends range in age from the 20s to the 80s.
Oh, nice.
Because when you're in an expat community, you need to make friends. And you make friends with Spaniards, but you also make friends with expats. The community it keeps you vibrant, it keeps you young.
Yeah.
Rather than sitting there with, dare I say it, a whole bunch of old people.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with old people.
That are talking about their team with their golf game.
Yeah.
Respect them, Rich. Respect them. So has there been a need to learn Spanish? I know you're in an expat community, but how does that work for
We
you?
absolutely needed to learn Spanish.
Oh.
When we first got there, no one spoke English. None of the people at the language school we signed up for spoke a word of English. Some people at the big hotels did, but only at the major ones. The attitude was, you're in Spain, you should be speaking Spanish. We'll do our best to help you. We'll be friendly about it, but we're not going to lose any sleep over the effort to learn English. The Spanish, like everybody, don't like to look foolish. And so they tried learning English and spent 15 minutes on it and said, oh, God, this is hard. We're just going to stick with Spanish. A few years back, the tourist thing really hit in Spain. Up until maybe 7 years ago, there wasn't a soul in the city that I ever ran across that spoke English.
Wow.
And then, the expats did, but none of the Spaniards. And then because of the influx of tourism,
Yes.
the need for English became more apparent. And when the economy was really rough, people very wisely said, okay, my policy on English is now changing. I'm jumping in on it. And a lot of young people have learned it. And it's quite common now to go into a restaurant, for example, order in Spanish and be answered in English. But up until recently, that wasn't the case. So it was sink or swim. If you wanted to order a pound of cheese at the market, you had to figure out, first of all, the metric system.
Right.
And then you had to figure out what the word for cheese was. And it was really good for vocabulary.
And we did get by.
Yeah.
In those early days, we got by. A lot of people I know say, I couldn't possibly go to a country that doesn't speak English. But you find it's more vibrant for you. And it does make your synapses function
Yes.
when you learn a different language.
Right.
And how is your Spanish now?
Karen is fluent. I am.
Wow.
I'm okay. Let's put it that way. She's much more conversant than I am. She has a gift for languages where I did not. And so, but I can make myself understood. I can read Spanish fine. I don't always understand what they're saying, so it always provides an interesting conversation.
A lot of hand gestures,
Yeah,
tell you-
we're good at charades. They're big in my family.
I'll tell you, the Spaniards really appreciate it, though, when you're trying to speak their language.
Oh, sure. It's respect. Yeah.
When you speak their language.
Yeah,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
You get no sniffy attitudes if you don't pronounce things perfectly or any of that.
Right.
No, the language thing has been really interesting for me, learning another language, because you learn a different way of expressing things. They use
Right.
different words for things. Different concepts are behind the words. It's been really fun. What I find is that often one person in the couple will be more fluent than the other. And the difficulty is that then the person who's less fluent has a tendency to sit back and not try as hard. It's not a good idea. You really
Right.
both need to learn it because it makes it so much more fun. And I will tell you, Rich is fearless. He will go to a party, even early on when he spoke about 12 words of Spanish, we would go to parties where everyone spoke Spanish. Nobody spoke a word of English.
Wow.
You know, we were lucky enough to meet one woman, our landlady, early on. She seemed, for some reason, to find our pidgin Spanish amusing, and we started going out to coffee with her. And then pretty soon we were having dinner at her house and everything. It was so fascinating to struggle as hard as we had to just keep up with the conversation.
Wow.
The worst is jokes. Forget jokes in a foreign language for the first year or so.
Sure.
It's really impossible. But we did pretty soon manage to catch up with the basic social structure and how people did things and what you were expected to say. The Spanish tend to like to repeat things, and they like to go over familiar ground, as we all do. It's a beautiful day, whatever. Do you think the pandemic will ever end? We tend to repeat ourselves a lot. So do they. So we picked up phrases, and then we were off and running. You know, just
Oh, wow.
putting ourselves into conversations, whether we knew what we were saying or not.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about the cost of living in Seville?
Well, the cost of living is substantially less than it is here in the States. Groceries in general are less expensive. Going out for a meal, let's just say. Karen and I, normally, if we go out for a meal with a fairly simple meal with a glass of wine, probably costs us combined maybe 16 euros,
Okay.
which equates to almost $20.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
So, I mean, we're always shocked when we come back to the U.S. and go out for dinner and the bill comes and it's like, oh my God, you know, did I just buy the meal for the table next to me?
Right. It must be hard to get back to the U.S. and have a meal compared to just leaving a steak dinner paying 20.
People are always saying things like, did you see the price of beer here? I go, $5 for a beer? Oh, yeah, aren't the prices here great? And we're thinking we pay €1.20, which is about $1.60.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's just, we have to recalibrate our brains every time we come back. And shopping. Oh my God. You go into a supermarket and there's 700 brands of cereal.
Oh.
It's a nightmare. Here. In Spain, there are 4, and then 3 of them are chocolate. And if you want to buy oatmeal, you have to go to a specialty store across town. It's just a really different environment. But you know what you want, you go out, you get it. It is so much simpler. Here it's a struggle, and then the sticker shock on top of it.
Quite honestly, we have too many choices here. And so it gets confusing. So when we first come back to the States, we'll go, as Karen said, to the cereal section. There's so many choices to choose from. We usually wind up not getting anything because there's too many choices.
Yeah, information overload.
Going in and saying, do you want this box of cereal, either chocolate or it's wheat?
Yeah.
Which one do you want?
Yeah.
You know?
It could be, but
And so it's much easier to make decisions, we find over there. As far as the cost of housing, electricity, those sorts of things, they're substantially cheaper. Now, you can go up to Madrid or you can go to Barcelona and you're paying Paris and Rome prices. But if you're in Seville, which is still relatively in the boonies, it's not expensive at all. I would say for us to live here full time, our cost of living would be about equal to us living here part-time and living in Seville part-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
you save enough to make up the airfare and the other expenses of going back and forth, and then some, I would imagine.
And if you're renting out your house here, if you own a house and you're renting out your house, you'd probably make money.
So for like a 1-bedroom, let's say, can you give us Euro-wise, give us a sense?
1 bedroom would probably run you between, I would say, 500 and 600 euros a month.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Nice.
2-bedroom, probably 800 a month. A 3-bedroom, depending on, then you start to get up there, anywhere between 1,000, let's say, and 2,500 a month. And
Okay.
those are really, I mean, the last
Luxurious.
one, really nice places.
Really nice
Yeah.
place, maybe with a garage attached, because
Mm.
some people
Wow.
actually do have cars in Seville, and parking is a nightmare. So the whole garage issue is huge if you do have a car.
Okay.
Food is cheaper.
Yeah, every time we go to the supermarket, we look at what we bought for $150 and figure, in Seville that would have been 60 maybe.
Yeah.
It just, everything is just more expensive.
And what
Yeah.
about, just going to touch upon healthcare? I mean, I know that you come back to the States, and maybe you come back if there's anything serious. Did you take into consideration, especially given your background, Richard, talk to us about healthcare for those who wish to live in Seville, let's say year round?
I should start by saying Medicare does not cover you overseas.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that. So they think they can still get covered overseas. Medicare stops at the borders of the United States.
Mhm.
So it's important for you to have some form of health insurance. Now, we do see people that go over without it, but we think that's a foolish
Mhm.
activity. We carry our health insurance. Ours is a little more complicated than most people because I've got retired military, and so as a result, I'm covered by the military anywhere in the world.
Oh,
But
wow.
having said that, we do carry a basic health insurance over there, which is a company called Sanitas. This is not an advertisement.
Mhm.
And it runs us about $700 a quarter,
That's-
700 euros, I'm sorry.
That's
a
good.
quarter. And that's
Yeah.
for both of us. It's gone up. It goes up every year because of my age.
Mhm.
Not so much Karen's, but because of my age. So when we first started paying it, we were paying around 300, when I was in my 60s. And it's gone up to about 700 a quarter now. So having said that, a lot of people say, well, I couldn't possibly function without the healthcare in the United States. I was talking to Karen just before we came on. You have to realize the United States is rated 17th in the world in terms of quality of healthcare.
Wow.
So there are a lot of other countries out there that
Right.
have better healthcare systems.
Right.
I would
Amazing.
say, as far as Spain is concerned, we believe that the basic healthcare that you get, primary care, secondary care, is excellent. When you start getting into the high-end things like the high-end specialty cares like neurology and things of that sort, the quality is not quite as good as you would have in the United States because there isn't an abundance of physicians
Special.
that have that
Mhm.
specialty.
Mhm.
So, but having said that, we have no fear about going to the Spanish healthcare system.
Well, and the system itself is so much more accessible. If I get bronchitis or something and I think, geez, I really got to go see somebody about it, I just walk down to the clinic and I go in and they see me within 15 minutes.
Oh,
Wow.
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's great. The other thing that they do is they make house calls. It's routine. I was sick one time, quite sick with, I tended to get bronchial coughing kind of disease long before COVID, not COVID,
Mm.
but other stuff like that
Mhm.
years ago when we first got there for some reason. And so one time it had lasted for a while and Rich was getting concerned. So he called over and they said, we'll have a doctor at your door in 2 hours. And 2 hours to the minute, there was a knock on the door. Some
Wow.
guy came in with a medical bag.
We think he was a doctor.
We think he was a doctor. Rich led him to the bed. He examined my body and left. But he gave us a couple of prescriptions. And the thing is, everybody sort of gets the same things. Everybody kisses each other on both cheeks every time you meet. We share every germ that's going around. The pharmacists know exactly what everybody needs. The doctors know exactly what everybody needs. They stock up on it. I got the same prescription probably everybody else in my building was taking. And it worked fine. I was
Mhm.
okay in a week. So the system has been really good for us. We use it for minor stuff. They tend to be far more willing to have you come in every single day to have a dressing changed, for instance.
Mhm.
Where here they would figure that was an unfair use of resources or something. There they would think, oh, no, it'll be better for them. No, really, it'll be fine. We are very grateful for the level of care that we get there on this sort of basic day-to-day level.
And as far as pharmaceuticals are concerned, you can, by and large, well, first of all, insurance, nobody covers pharmaceuticals in Spain. You have to buy your own. You have to go to the pharmacy.
Out of pocket.
Most things are non-prescription items that you would have to have a prescription. The average charge is $3.
Wow.
So when you go, the pharmacist really discusses it with you. You discuss it with them. They come out
And
with,
everybody else in
everybody else in the pharmacy.
Oh, yeah, my grandmother had that. Oh, she's a martyr.
There are no secrets in the pharmacy, I'll tell you that. And so as a result, we're getting the same drugs that we get here in the United States for $3 for 3 years. So we have friends come over and they need to fill a prescription. I take them down to the local pharmacy. They have their prescription bottle from the US. They put it on the counter, $3.
Right. We hear that from around around the world, actually, that you can, if you're taking, something serious, even like cholesterol or high blood pressure medicine, that it's commonplace and you don't need a physician.
Yeah. And even if you're supposed to have a prescription, talk to you for a while and then they'll go, all right, look, I'm just going to sell it. Just okay. And then they'll tell you some of this controlled substance. And what they want to make sure is, obviously we're not there buying, prednisone as a recreational drug. We're there buying if somebody's got a problem and that's what their doctor thinks they need right now. It's practical common sense. Very comforting to know that right down the street from my house is a pharmacy that knows me, knows what I take. And I get thyroid pills and I kept bringing them in for, must have been 6 years. And finally they pointed out when they were handing it back to me that it says right on the package, must have a doctor's prescription. So they said, look, we don't mean to intrude in your life, but if you could possibly drop by the clinic and get an actual prescription, it would make our lives a little better.
Oh,
so I did that. And now I go once a year and get
That's so funny.
set up by my physician. I had a wonderful experience. The first time I went, I was sort of having a little bit of high cholesterol. I'd been in the States and my doctor had said that my cholesterol was a little high. So I wanted to get a second opinion. So I went to the Spanish doctor at the clinic. I walked in, got who I got. He gave me a bunch of tests to do. And then I came back 2 weeks later and he goes, your cholesterol is a little bit high. He says, but first I want to ask you some questions. He says, do you smoke? I said, no. He says, do you drink? I said, yes. And he said, well, how much do you drink? And I was thinking about it. And at the time, we were going out a lot. And so I said, geez, I must have 1 or 2 like beers or glasses of wine a day, which in America, they start giving you the card.
That's nothing.
And he goes, oh, that's nothing. In fact, we have to get that up. He's joking, but it made me feel so much better. He could tell that I was paranoid about saying it. And then he says, okay, so your cholesterol is a little bit high. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to eat more dark chocolate. I want you to drink more red wine. And I think it might be a good idea for you to eat more ham, the Spanish jamon. And every Spanish friend I had told me the same thing, more jamon. And I said, now I got to ask you, you're a medical professional. Seriously? And he said, well, not all ham. Oh, that would be silly.
Okay.
But the good stuff, the acorn raised jamon, that is the highest of the high. He said that stuff has been shown in tests to have antioxidants that are good for your cholesterol. Now I've looked it up and there was a study and it did kind of indicate that. Whether I needed to eat ham to get my cholesterol down, I don't know.
But you still eat it.
I eat plenty of it because they serve it everywhere.
Wait, what's it called again? What's it called?
Jamon. It's Jamon. It's just the Spanish spelling,
the
highest level.
Interesting.
So, jamon iberico, because it's the Iberic Peninsula. Jamon iberico.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely delicious. You probably have seen pictures, if you haven't seen it in real life, of the giant ham legs hanging upside down like bats in the top. All of the cafes and bars and restaurants, they have little cups underneath them to collect the drippings. And they will sell you those drippings as something to smear on your toast, which I took by accident one time because they had colored it orange and I thought it was cheese.
Oh my God.
Disgusting thing. The inside of my mouth was coated with grease for a day. I kept brushing it.
Gene doesn't eat red meat, so he's not feeling very well right now.
We'll change the subject.
I have no problem with it.
What people over there do. Cholesterol's probably fine anyway, Gene. I wouldn't worry about it. Just focus on the dark chocolate and the red.
I don't know if any doctor here would recommend ham. I think
he'd lose his license. He or she would lose his license.
Exactly. I know. It is very counterintuitive, but a lot of things in Spain are counterintuitive to me. Like I was always raised with the idea you have to have 8 hours of sleep, and mandatory, or you're just going to be non-functional, be a gibbering idiot. 2 nights with short sleep, forget it. And I got to Spain and during the fair, the big high holy days and the processions at Easter time, there's 2 huge 2-week events that take place every spring. Nobody sleeps. People are up all night, at least on Thursday of Holy Week, all during the week-long fair. And the average Spaniard we've read gets 2 hours of sleep a night. And the attitude is, have a cup of coffee, move on with your day.
But don't go to the dentist during that week.
Don't get your car worked on, don't have a haircut. don't trust anybody to do fine motor skill stuff, but the attitude is you get as much sleep as you can and you don't worry about it. And it's really been amazing because now that's my attitude. I tend to get insomnia. It kind of runs in my family. And I don't fret about it. I just get up and read a book and then I go to sleep. It's just, if I have short sleep, I don't look at it as a horrible thing that I have to deal with. It's not a gigantic problem. If it went on for a long time, of course I deal with it, but it's just every once in a while I can't sleep. And the Spanish would go, well, who cares? Get up and do it. Yeah.
I love that because I have major insomnia. I recently read a Harvard study, taking Benadryl could lead to memory issues. I was taking a Benadryl maybe every other night for a while because it would put me into deep sleep and I needed to function the next day. But then after reading this, I kind of freaked out. And now I alternate. I'll take a Benadryl, then maybe 3 days later, I'll take Zyrtec and then vice versa. But, because there's this whole sleep is supposedly, and maybe it's overrated, but it's so repeatedly bashed into us that you need to at least sleep 10 p.m. to 2 because that's when your cells are regenerating at their highest levels. But that's when I don't sleep the most, 10 to 2.
Well,
that's when I'm watching a show.
From 10 to 2. They have dinner at 10 and they go out.
Yes.
Especially in the summer. And everyone's out till 2, 3, 4 in the morning because it's the only time that the weather is bearable outdoors.
Oh.
And they seem to be doing fine.
Okay.
They really do. So a lot of this stuff, I believe, is cultural. I'm not saying the studies are wrong, but I'm saying that they are cultural. We are trained from childhood to believe certain things about our sleep patterns.
Right.
And we are raised with fear around our sleep patterns.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that I have worked to overcome from living in Spain. And it's been really good for me because now I just accept it as the way things are. And I don't look at it as a deficit or as a threat to my health.
That's brilliant.
Oh, interesting.
There are bars in Seville. Some stay open till 9 o'clock at night. Some stay open till midnight. Some stay open till 3 in the morning. And some stay open until 9 in the morning.
Some open at 2 or 1.
Some open at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
For late night bars.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
I think that's indicative of people.
The culture.
Saying, I can stay up all night long.
Yeah. Kids want to get out of the house. The ones that are of drinking age, and the whole drinking age thing is a little softer over there.
Yeah.
They go out as teenagers. They can't afford much. So usually they bring their own liquor, but sooner or later, somebody will want to use a bathroom or people want to go to a bar for a little break. They go in and they want to stay up all night. They leave their houses at 11 or 12 at night. They've slept half the day if they can manage. I'm talking weekends or, summers or whatever, but the teenagers go out late at night. They stay out till dawn. It's very common to see them walking back. We were taking a train at dawn one time. And as we were walking to the train station, we were in Valencia. All these kids were coming home from being out all night drinking, draggled. They looked happy. They were singing a little bit. It was nice. It was just different, different attitudes, cycle of the day. It's sort of how they divvy up the city. The old people go to bed earlier. The young people go out and have a good time.
You will rarely find drunks in Seville because they eat and drink all the time. We have the custom of tapas where you get a drink and you have a little plate that you can eat from. I think that sort of makes sure that you don't have to drink so much that you fall down drunk. Rarity you would ever see that.
They serve sort of 7 or 8 ounces glasses of beer. That's the most common thing, particularly in the hot weather, that everybody drinks. So you don't really get blasted, but you can spend a whole evening going from bar to bar, having a few tapas. And in the ordinary course of things, the Spanish eat 5 meals a day. This is another so different from America. It's like snacking is evil here. Okay, no, forget that. So they do 5 meals a day. So first they get up and have coffee and toast with ham. And then they get to the office around 9-ish. And then around 10:30, 11, everybody goes out and has more coffee and more toast with ham. And everybody always takes it exactly their same way. There's a few varieties of ways it can be done, but your bartender always knows how you take your coffee, how you take your toast.
Nice.
And they just present it to you when you walk in, and it generally go to the same bar or several bars, their coffee in the morning. So that's two breakfasts. And then lunch is around 2 o'clock, much later than we eat it. And then, of course, a siesta.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I am a huge fan of the siesta.
Really?
Oh,
Me
it's
too.
fantastic. I mean, and some people say, well, you are getting older. No, I have been doing this for a long time. It's absolutely lovely. It gives me 14 mornings a week. I'm a morning person, and I sleep better. If I sleep at siesta, I sleep better at night. It means that I'm not so revved up to race through my day. It means that your day has two arcs to it, so you don't get all that pressure. The American system seems so high pressure to me now that you would get up at 6 a.m. and go till 10 at night.
Crazy.
It just seems insane. And there's no real accounting for, you're supposed to work all day and then you get home, you race around, you make meals. And if you've got a family, you're taking care of kids or your grandparents or whatever it is. It just never stops. And you fall into bed.
Get to the fourth meal.
Oh, the fourth meal. Then when you get up from the siesta, I knew there was a point to the story. Fourth meal is called merienda, which is afternoon snack. Now, the Spanish go all out with this, more coffee and a sweet roll.
To wake them up.
So that
this is why they can't sleep.
There you go, Gail.
To power through. Now, I do not go to the sweet roll route very much. I tend to be more like maybe a piece of toast or some yogurt or something. But I do have something every afternoon when I get up from siesta.
And do you do siesta when you're back in the States?
Yes. Yeah, it's one of the small silver linings of the pandemic is that nobody calls or stops by, during the siesta hours. So we're much more relaxed. And in the normal course of things, it's really hard not to have, workmen coming over or people dropping by or whatever. Now it's nice and quiet and peaceful. We get our siestas in every single day.
Oh, Richard, you too?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Rich is a champion sleeper. He can sleep in the dentist chair.
I have also.
Planes and stuff. Anyway, so then the last meal of the day is, of course, dinner, which they have around 10 o'clock at night. Full meal with usually beer or wine or something. And then often go out for a little walk afterwards or something. I mean, for us, one of the joys of going out to eat in Seville is that we usually will be walking back at midnight or 1 o'clock through the city streets, pleasant weather, everybody else is out. It's a nice way to sort of come down from the evening emotionally, digestive-wise, I guess.
Yes.
You just ease out of the dinner as opposed to getting in your car and driving and getting out. It's so abrupt now. Those are the 5 meals.
You don't have dinner in California at 10 now, do you?
No, we usually eat around 8. A little later than
it's a compromise.
It's a compromise. We have friends who eat at 5.
Right.
And we find that a little more difficult. We have friends who eat lunch at 11:30. We eat usually around 1:30 or 2.
Okay.
We kind of stick to the meal schedule. And we have our second breakfast.
Oh, you have a second breakfast now?
Yeah. Well, we have a real breakfast with oatmeal. I make granola every week for Rich. He loves it. It saves us all that decision making in the aisles of the supermarket.
Sure.
Breeze right through. We don't even stop in that aisle anymore. Anyway, the second breakfast is usually something lighter, just a nibble of, a cookie or toast or something light. But it's a pause in the day as well as a little nibble of something. Say that the arc of my day is a general one.
Right. Well, that's a lot of coffee in one day. I wouldn't be able to. I'd be decaf, especially 10 o'clock.
I'm not a big coffee drinker. I'll have my 1 cup of coffee in the morning and then I won't have coffee after that.
Yeah. I certainly can't do coffee after lunch or after siesta.
Yeah. I mean, I love coffee. And if it didn't have the effects, I'd be drinking it around the clock. But,
we always say that in France, they see food as a friend, where in the United States, you see food as the enemy.
Yeah.
I think that goes for Spain as well.
I think that goes for Spain as well, that they don't worry that much about, oh my God, I'm on a strict diet.
Right. That's a United States phenomenon. Yeah.
It is. As a result, the quality of the food is very good. Most of the food we eat is all fresh food.
Right.
Fresh hamon. But
that hamon.
So you eat a little, you don't eat huge meals. So even when you go out at night at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, you're not eating a huge steak dinner or anything like that. You're eating light meals, and it's all fresh. So it's all healthy for you.
The desserts in Spain are very popular. You don't want them. They're the most gorgeous looking desserts you've ever seen. These 10-layer cakes with whipped cream between each layer. Yeah. smothered in some sort of frou-frou-y pink frosting.
Oh, so nice.
But they have no flavor. Interesting. They're just basically sugar and
vanilla.
Fat. There's not that there's anything wrong with sugar and fat. God knows I don't use enough of it. They don't use vanilla. They don't use like almond flavoring. They tend to have extremely bland cakes. And
unlike the French.
No, the France is where you want to go for dessert.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, definitely. Which is great. But I do eat them sometimes because if I'm at somebody's house and we're having one of these eternal dinner parties, or even though we're eating small amounts, we start eating, say at 9:30 or 10. Often it's served just around a coffee table, and it'll be one little mini course after another. So by midnight or 1 o'clock, I need something to keep me awake. So I go, yes, I'll have some cake. And they serve me an enormous piece of fluff that is 99% sugar.
They trace this all the way back to the Moors, because the Moors used to be the bakers. And when the Moors left Spain, there was nobody to step in and take up baking. And so as a result, they believed that baking should look good, not necessarily taste good.
Because they lost the knack of it. It was a disgraced profession because it was associated, when they were kicking everybody out.
Sure.
Yeah.
During the Inquisition.
It sounds like the desserts are the same desserts that I see at New Jersey diners. And I always get fooled. I go to that carousel of spinning desserts. They look beautiful. The chocolate, everything looks beautiful. I get a piece and it's basically it's just sugar.
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like that. And I get fooled every time. But back to food. Are the restaurants mainly tapas, or can you get a variety of food?
Oh, no, you can get anything, especially now. But yeah, they have.
Every bar serves food, but most of it is really tapas. But there are many restaurants around town. You don't get a lot of Chinese restaurants. You don't get a lot of Indian restaurants. The Spaniards like their own restaurants. And so they like their own food.
Wow.
So we had a friend of ours that was in England, and he invited some Spanish friends to come and stay with him. And they showed up with a full leg of ham because they weren't sure they could get Spanish ham.
Oh my goodness.
And they probably couldn't.
They probably couldn't. They like what they like. They like fish. They like chicken. They like pork.
They like wild boar.
They like wild boar.
Wow.
They like those types of things. Fish is a big item on their menu.
But they like sharing small plate.
The tapas, often it's just you eating your own tapa, or you get a platter for the middle of the table. But sharing is a big function, big way that people eat there. Everybody, and before COVID at least, everybody reached in with their hands to take food. It's just considered normal. You don't stop and get a fork to take your share out. It's just not considered necessary. And so this is very old style, family style eating. And I'll be very curious when we get back there. As you know, we're in California at the moment, hoping to get back soon to Spain, now that it's finally opening it back up to Americans. And, I'll be interested to see whether COVID has changed that or not. But I suspect we will still be eating with our hands out of common dishes.
Wow.
Right along, just as we always have.
Well, if you really want good tapas and you head over to Berkeley, Jean's sister, Oakland, Jean's sister has a really New York Times listed acote. ACOTE. Yummy.
Yeah, she has a restaurant on College Avenue in Oakland.
Where Karen used to live.
Yeah, College Avenue.
Karen lived on College Avenue.
Wow.
College in Ashby.
It's actually in Oakland. It's in the Rockridge section.
Oh, in Rockridge. Yeah, great area.
Yeah.
Oh, so acote, is it Spanish or?
It's really Mediterranean, but it's small dishes. That's why when she opened it, must have been 20 years ago, it got a lot of attention because there weren't so many small dish non-tapas restaurants around. So it was in the New York Times. It's a lot of places.
Now it's really popular. I wanted to ask you, since half the year you live in Seville, and the other half you mentioned you're either back home in California or I shouldn't say back home. I should say back home in the States. Not necessarily. It could be Seville back home. Are you renting a new place every time you go back to Seville? I guess that's the question. And is it hard to find?
They rent it all year. I was thinking that, but
you rent it all year.
We rent all year. We want to be able to come and go as we please.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So you've had the same place for years.
15 years, 16.
Oh.
Something like 15 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's good, because then you don't have to worry about, moving, all that. And okay.
Yeah.
That clears up a lot for me.
We feel like we truly live there. In the past we spent more than 6 months sometimes, but it's we're just evolving our lifestyle, and it seems to work out best for us to have about 6 months there and the other 6 months here and or on the road, depending.
Okay.
I have a question about siesta. I want to go back to siesta. I had read a few years ago, I think in the New York Times.
That's because he takes like 5 siestas a day. Okay.
I'm pro siesta. And just as Gillen, as you can see, she's not saying much, but she's not big into siesta.
No, it's not that. I have a tough time falling out. And when I do, my siestas are 2 hours.
No, I think one of the main reasons is when we've been to Europe, you go to the store in the afternoon and it's closed. Why?
Yeah,
because of siesta.
Yes. And we got married in Florence and we couldn't get our license because everything was closed from 2 to 4. Remember that?
Yeah.
That delayed our marriage by a day.
Oh, God, no.
Okay.
But it's true that you weren't so happy with the siesta.
Well, because I can't use it. You know what I mean? I can't benefit from it.
And the stores are closed.
And I don't care about that.
Yes, you do.
Okay. Go back to your question. What was your question?
Right. My question is, I had read that the siesta was dying in part because businesses weren't so happy with it. And people would, they stay out late, like you say, and they drink a little. And the thing that keeps them going is the siesta. Do you find that true that it's dying or not?
It's not in Seville.
Okay.
But in other parts of Spain and throughout Europe, what's happening is the European Union is pushing to get rid of it. So that
interesting.
It's just not the commercial businesses, it's business in general. I mean, the financial sectors, all of that. If you close for 2 hours, you're not making any money.
Wow, that's cultural.
That was more cultural. And so we've seen some changes in Seville over the course of the last 15 years. It's still, they talked about doing away with the siesta, but every Sevillano will say, it's never going to happen. We just are not going to do it. We're going to continue to take our siestas.
And
I love that.
Pushing for it in part just because they want conformity. And Seville is not really big on certain kinds of conformity. They're very big on conformity to their own traditions. Right. They don't really give the time of day to anybody else's. So I think it'll be a long time before the siesta disappears. But I think it will gradually erode because of all of this pressure. If you're in a business in Seville doing business with a company up in Madrid, it starts to get awkward. But the positive side of the stores being closed during the siesta hours, usually like 2 to 5, a good 3-hour window is what we usually find, is that then they open again from 5 to 8. So they're open later. They're about the same number of shopping hours, but it divides your day into these 2 arcs so that you have the morning activities and you have the afternoon activities. And you sort of pace your day around it. And once you get used to it, it drove me nuts at first. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was always charging out the door and realizing that nothing was available. But I love it now. Yeah. And, some of the bigger stores, like the big department store, El Corte Inglés, is open throughout the whole lunch hour and on into the evening. It has long hours. So if you desperately need an egg beater in the middle of the afternoon, you can get one. But generally speaking, the stores do close, and it gives a rhythm to life that is human scale. Seville is all about life at human scale.
I love that.
And it's less so, it's eroding because of the pressure from the modern world, but it is still in many ways about tiny neighborhood bars where everybody gathers. It is about stopping in the middle of the day to go home and have lunch with your family.
Sure.
I should say that Sundays are sacrosanct.
Oh, yeah.
In Seville, everything is closed by law.
Oh.
Except little shops that are smaller than 1,000 square feet. So that's about 600 square meters, something like that.
Yeah.
And so the major department stores, everything is shut down. And so when we first got there, it drove us crazy because we couldn't go out, we couldn't shop, we couldn't do what we needed to do. And slowly but surely, we adjusted to that, and we realized that Sundays now are our favorite day of the week. Wow. Because you get up late, you have a coffee, you have a little breakfast, you might go out and get something, you come back, you rest, and then you go out for a very long lunch, which most Spaniards go with their family. And you'll sit and you'll come back and you'll have a long siesta and just relax for the day. And it just takes all the pressure off.
That's great.
Wow.
And
So everything
the
you need.
Spaniards are all with their families on Sundays. So we very rarely see any Spanish friends of ours.
Oh, interesting.
But the restaurants are open.
The restaurants are open. The restaurants do open.
And they do have big family meals. So on Sundays when we're in Seville, we usually walk out, maybe 45 minutes, a good long, stroll, and to eat at one of the family style restaurants in any direction. I mean, we have places all over the city that we enjoy. And while we're here in California, we don't do that because it's just not the same sort of situation. But what we do is we have our own Spanish style Sunday afternoon lunch where we set up a table in the garden, we make a nice meal,
Nice.
Wow.
wine, and then take a siesta. You see how the system works? Very nice.
I love it. I love it. So have you made many friends in Seville? Or are they mostly expats or?
Sure, it's a very social city. And one of the things about living in an expat community is that it's easy to meet expats because they all know how important it is to have a social life and that you're struggling to establish a social life. So when you meet someone, they will sort of check you out, see if they're going to be your new best friend, but then they'll pass you on to the next person, which you don't bother to do here. But if somebody...
enlarge the circle.
Yeah, to enlarge the circle. So somebody will say, "Oh, you're a writer. There's another writer that moved here, or you're from California. There's another Californian, or you like jazz. I don't, but other people I hear do. You like jazz. I'll put you together with this person who likes jazz." So there's just this constant sort of effort to keep the conversations going in as many directions as you can.
Oh, nice.
There's a couple of clubs that everybody joins in the beginning, and then you meet a few people, and then sometimes you keep going and sometimes you don't.
It's not just Americans either.
Yeah, it's not just Americans. It's people from all over the world. I mean, among our closest friends are what?
French,
British,
Iranian,
Irish. Yeah, I mean, it's a broad spectrum, and Spanish as well. And so it makes for a nice mix.
Well, when we first came to Spain, Karen was talking about our landlord, and she got Karen involved in a painting group, which was all Spanish. And you were in that for about 2 or 3 years.
Oh, 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Wow.
But that introduced us to husbands of the people that were in it, and we would go on trips with them.
Wow.
And it was all strictly Spanish. If you make an effort to get out there, then you're fine. If you sit there and say, "Oh, I couldn't possibly, talk to a Spaniard, or I couldn't possibly do this, or I couldn't possibly do that." We had some people we knew that came and said, "We are not going to leave our apartment until we speak perfect Spanish." Well, they left in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Would say the other thing is a lot of people will come to Spain thinking that they're going to move there. They'll stay for a week or two and say, "We absolutely love this place. We're going to move here." And we discourage that because when you first come, you're always on vacation. But it's difference between being on vacation and actually settling down and living in a place.
Yeah.
And so what we say is, come spend a month here, rent an Airbnb or do something, see how you like it, come back again, see how you like it, find the neighborhood that appeals to you, those sorts of things. And then make the decision whether you want to move here. But don't come here for a week and decide this is ideal, because no place is an ideal life.
Right. Right. Excellent.
It's funny. The more and more you speak about Spain, I think more and more it reminds me of growing up in a small town where the neighbors looked after you and you had doctors who came to your house. It's funny that we don't really have that here in the States much anymore.
Yeah, that's gone.
Well, at least where we live.
We have a knife sharpener that comes to the neighborhood. He plays his little pipe and everybody rushes out and they sharpen the knives. I mean,
We actually have that in Bay Ridge.
We still have one in Brooklyn. Yeah, there's a guy in
oh
Brooklyn.
God, really?
We've got to
Yes.
move.
Yeah.
All right, we're
gonna
moving
move
to
to
Brooklyn. That's it. What always still pertains.
Yeah.
We don't have anything like that here. I mean, we have other things, but
Yeah, you have cool stuff
What
in
are you
California.
kidding? You're
Come on.
I mean,
You have cool stuff in
you
California.
have better stuff.
I remember as a kid, my grandmother lived up in the Bronx, and she lived in the Irish ghetto up there. In those days. And then we used to go up and visit her, and it was the same thing that you're talking about. It was all neighborhood. Neighbors would come out and watch the kids or just keep an eye on them. And a lot of that has disappeared.
Yeah.
But in Spain, they have no hesitancy about coming up to you in a restaurant and saying, that child should have a hat on.
Yeah.
Or you're not dressing that child appropriately. The child needs warmer clothes.
I
love that.
They feel free to be able to do that. And most people would take offense at the United States. There, it's just sort of like, oh, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would not recommend that in New York.
But it's like your grandmother saying it.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah. We were in a restaurant one time with a couple of young British couple that had just moved there with their baby. And we were telling them this was how people are in Spain and how they would expect that people would pay attention to their baby in a way that they might not be used to. And with that, the waiter comes out and says in Spanish, my God, that is the cutest baby I've ever seen, picks it up out of its stroller and walks into the kitchen with it. Now, in America, there would be an Amber Alert out for this.
Yes. I was just thinking that.
The young British couple look at us and go, what is that? I go, it's fine. And you could hear him out there going, look at this cute baby. Oh my God, is it adorable? And everybody giving a fuss, and then him coming back and placing it in mother's arms. So it was a really lovely moment. And I could tell they probably are having nightmares about it to this day.
Of course. Could you imagine? It's like, there's a little American babies on the market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But again, that's that's the way things used to be. My mother would take me in the carriage.
Yeah, she'd leave you outside
to the supermarket and leave me outside.
Yeah.
In the carriage, and
I think that's insane.
I survived.
Right,
I don't know.
You survived. No one wanted you.
but that reminds me of that story. That's funny. But,
well, they still do that in some places today. I was reading this story about, or actually watching a TED Talk by somebody from, I think it was Denmark, one of the Nordic countries. I think it was Denmark, who said that people there still do routinely leave babies outside of a cafe. And they showed there were 3 or 4 baby carriages just out in front of this thing. And when somebody said, well, who watches the kids? She said, we all do.
Oh, that is so sweet.
That's how it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it was.
Well, I watch all these European mystery thrillers, and I do not recommend leaving a child outside. I don't care. I don't care.
Especially in the county of Midsummer,
Midsummer.
God in heaven, people die at the rate of 7 an episode. We're 4 now.
I have a list of 40 shows.
Oh, all those noir shows, yeah.
Oh, dear Lord.
I have a question. How far is the nearest airport to you?
Oh, yeah.
In Spain?
We're from Seville. We're about, just for an airport, we're about 15 minutes from the airport by cab. We're 2 hours from London Heathrow.
Oh,
you can fly into Gatwick or London Heathrow.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's fairly convenient. What we usually do is we'll fly from San Francisco into Heathrow, stay overnight to get ourselves adjusted, and then take a commuter flight back to Seville.
Okay. Is there a direct flight from Seville to the States, or
no?
Not to San Francisco.
No.
Okay.
You'd have to go up to Madrid. And there's a direct flight from Madrid, which is 2.5 hours by train.
But that's so nice getting into Heathrow. Oh my God, you can spend a week there.
Can you take a train from London?
You can.
Well, you have to go through the Channel to France, and then come down through to Spain.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we did it once.
We did it, yeah. We went from London to Paris, which is actually only about an hour and a half.
Nice.
Yeah, surprising. Really fast.
Wow.
I mean, I never realized it was that. And of course, the train systems are so fabulous there. I mean, as Karen said, we took a 5-month trip and we went, trains, and some countries didn't have trains. So we had to take a bus. But I mean, it was effortless. Trains were all nice. We had a great time. and we weren't rushed.
And you could get pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
have a question going back to, like, we want to travel in a few years, 3 months here, 3 months there. But if we go beyond 3 months, you have to get a special visa.
Right.
So the two of you, how does that work? Because you're going back and forth in 6 months and so forth.
Good question.
Well, we have what's known as permanent residency.
Okay. So you got that. Mm-hmm.
And so as a result of that, the way it works is the first time you do this, you get a 1-year residency card.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time you get a 2-year residency card. And then third time you get a 2-year residency card. And then you get a 5-year residency card.
Oh.
And so
at that point, it's permanent.
At the
You're allowed to
5-year,
work.
it's permanent. You're allowed to work there. You're allowed to do whatever you want. But after that 5 years, you have to renew your card, not renew your residency.
Okay.
And so we're in that zone right now where we have our residency cards have expired.
Right.
So we can't get back into the country. But as soon as we go back, we're going to renew our residency card. The way the 90 days works is you're familiar with the shrinking countries.
No.
Which are there's a group of countries in the European Union called the shrinking countries, and they have mutual requirements. So if you go to Spain, for example, without a residency card, you can stay there for 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
But you can only stay in the shrinking countries for a total of 90 days.
Is that shrinking? What is that?
Shringen. It's
Shringen.
SCHRINGIN. I think.
Okay. I thought I misheard you. Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly the same list as the UN, as the EU, but it's very close. Most EU countries are in it, but a few aren't, and a few that aren't EU countries are part of it. But they have this reciprocal agreement about how long you can stay.
So you can only stay collectively in the shrinking countries for 90 days.
Oh,
so you can't go to Spain for 89 days and then go to France.
Okay, good to know.
It used to be true with England, but now England's in Brexit, so you can go to England, but you can't come back for 90 days.
Wow.
So you can't go and come and go and come and go.
Right.
Okay.
So, and the fines are rather substantial when you're leaving the country.
Really?
Wow.
So if you overstay your 90 days, you can be charged, I can't remember the number, but you can be charged like $1,000, and then you're banned from coming back.
Really?
Yeah.
Forever?
Yeah, you want to watch this and make sure you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do on this.
Wow.
So it's something to pay attention to, which most people don't realize. Well, I'll go to Spain for 90 days and then travel around Europe.
We're going to be relying on Karen's blog for all this.
Well, the good thing is you can always go to Albania because they're not part of the shrinking countries.
Exactly.
And it's a very entertaining place to go. Great prices, amazingly good food, and, not very many tourists, incredibly enough.
Yeah, speaking about Karen's blog, Karen, since you've moved to Spain, you've written 3 books. Can you just tell us a little about those books?
Well, what happened was, I've always been a writer, and I've always done a certain amount of travel writing, but also lifestyle and this, that, and the other. It was, I wasn't doing a lot when I got to Seville, but then I started writing for one of the local publications, newsletter, really, nothing fancy. And I started accumulating all these stories. And then one day I just had this idea that I really should write it down. There's always a question about, as a writer, what your next big project should be. And you have to wait until you get that moment when it's clear in your head. And it's just, I woke up one morning and it was clear in my head. I should really write a book about our transition to Seville. From Cleveland, Ohio to Seville, Spain is a pretty big jump. And so I started writing it. And as I got deep into the book, I started looking at how you publicize a book. And everybody said that I had to have a blog. That's the way that you get readers. Well, I didn't really even read a lot of blogs at that time. This was back in 2011. So I thought, well, okay, let me see what's happening. So I started reading other people's work, and I could see how I could continue, writing my book, but also start doing a blog. And I found that I love doing it, that writing a weekly basically like a weekly column
Yeah.
about any subject whatsoever that
Right.
interests me is absolutely the ideal assignment for me as a writer.
Yeah.
So the blog was originally designed to sort of promote my books, which it did a great job of. I was very happy about that. But the blog itself became the heartbeat of my writing life.
Nice.
It was this
Wow.
steady activity that I do more or less every day. I mean, I take not every day, every week.
Mhm.
And I take the odd week off here and there, usually around the holidays. And if we're traveling or something, I might skip it for a little bit. But also when we're traveling, it gives me an excuse to write about whatever crazy stuff is going on with us. So it's really adds to a lot of the fun. And the great thing about doing a blog is it gives you an excuse to be nosy, to go places you would never bother with, to take a cheesy tour just because it sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
All sorts of crazy stuff. And Rich is so supportive of the whole effort and loves the excuse to be nosy and go places we shouldn't do. So, we find ourselves doing things like, staying on an Albanian farmhouse and interviewing them about their food, or, going to a haunted hotel and all that kind of stuff, just for the fun of writing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the blog took on a life of its own. The book came out about Seville, and it did better than I ever expected it to, which was wonderful.
And that book's Dancing in the Fountain, right?
Dancing in the Fountain, How to Enjoy Living Abroad. So I called the blog Enjoy Living Abroad because it sort of tied in with that. And I thought I was just going to do the one book. But then a couple of years after that, Rich turned to me and he said, Karen, we're starting to get into a rut. We have to shake things up a little bit. The idea came forth that we would do a railway journey. So we ended up doing a long 3-month railway journey, mostly through Eastern Europe, had wild adventures, loads of fun. And that was the essence of the next book, Adventures of a Railway Nomad.
Oh, I like that.
So that also did surprisingly well. We were very happy with, the response to it. People really loved it. People said very nice things about it. It really helped to sell the book to have this blog, but the blog itself is really well worth doing. And I've done some smaller books, like a guide to packing light. Rich is always pushing me to bring fewer things on every trip. For 20 years, he tried to talk me into traveling without any luggage whatsoever. And I kept saying, that is insane. Why would I want to do that? A few creature comforts. I don't demand much, but a little something. And then one day, a friend sent us an article about a couple that had gone on a luggage-free trip. I read it, and she didn't go with nothing. She brought a purse with a little sunscreen and some toothpaste and all of that stuff. And I thought, well, I guess I could do that for a couple of days. So before my common sense could take over, I ran into the other room and I said, all right, I'll do it. We'll go away luggage-free for a few days. Well, Rich was overjoyed.
But where did you go? It wasn't like around the block. You went to a country.
We went to France.
Oh,
Yes.
Wow.
with a toothbrush. Is your house in Seville like minimal? Did you guys, get very little furniture?
No, we are not minimalist by nature. I paint so the walls are full of paintings.
Yeah.
We have an old Oriental rug on the floor. We have big comfy furniture with stuff draped over it.
So it's California in Seville.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're not minimalist, but we can walk out and lock the door and, have somebody check on it very infrequently. And
what
it'll
does
be
Karen
fine.
say we are? Our houses are...
Windows for the Soul.
No.
One?
No. The type of
whimsical.
Whimsical.
Yeah.
I know what whimsical
Couldn't
is.
figure out what our style was. She finally decided it was whimsical.
I know exactly what that is. Okay.
And when you travel without anything, do you no clothes at all?
Well, we wear clothes. We don't go naked. Because we find people tend to stare.
We've already had that couple on our show.
Oh yeah, we did have a couple.
It's been known. So what we do is we have clothes that can be laundered. This underwear that's made by Ex Officio. If you wash it at night, it's dry in the morning.
Loves that. Ex Officio. Yeah.
So I wore that stuff, and I had a gauzy undershirt, and then another shirt over that, and a jacket. It was October; it was still quite warm in Europe. We had outfits that could be refreshed in the hotel room at night, keep us in some level of hygiene. Everybody seemed to be certain that we were just going to wear the same clothes, never take them off, never wash them. I spent so much time discussing my underwear every time this conversation happens, but that's fine. I do feel that a reasonable level of hygiene was maintained far better than I ever did on a camping trip.
I'm glad we're talking about this.
And it's really funny to arrive at a hotel without any luggage.
Really?
It always goes like this. They always welcome us in, and then they say, "Where is your luggage?" And I say, "We have no luggage." And they always look down at the floor at our feet like we're fooling them in some way, like this is a practical joke.
These are criminals. They're criminals.
Look at us. And I mean, it all gets very confusing. And then we explain about what we're doing. Sometimes they speak enough English or we speak enough of their language to walk them through what we're doing. And sometimes they just obviously think we're insane, but we're customers and they won't say anything.
Or we're having an affair.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
How long are you staying?
That's what I was thinking of.
That's
Yeah.
a good one.
Yeah.
You just
So-
met, yeah.
That's a good one. Or that you're going to buy everything there. I mean, what do they care?
Yeah, tell the truth. Have you bought anything? Did you buy
Of
anything while
course
you were
she
there?
has.
We always do. I mean, what happens is you bring a tiny little tube of toothpaste, and after 2 days, it's gone. So you buy another one.
No.
Or-
He's talking about clothes.
Clothes,
He's
clothing.
talking about clothes, Cameron.
No, we not on our luggage-free trip because it's like a sacred quest at that point. It is an agreement that we come to with each other.
Really?
We are
Interesting.
buying nothing except, if we lose the sunscreen, we'll buy another. We absolutely are trying to see what it's like to walk through the world unencumbered by luggage. And that, my friends, is actually a very nice feeling.
It
Wow.
is.
So it compensates for not having everything with us that we would like. Now,
Mhm.
we brought Kindles the first time we did it.
Mm.
Later, we just got Kindle books on our phone, so we
Nice.
didn't even have to take that. We take a few small creature comforts.
Mhm.
I'm very worried about sunscreen. I have
Sure.
my skin that does not do well in sun without sunscreen, so I always make sure I have some of that. We brought little things like that would keep us safe, healthy, and comfortable. We brush our teeth with toothpaste.
Well, I should say that outside of the luggage-less travel, we also, when we go on the 5-month trips, it's only carry-on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Small carry-on
5
bag.
months.
So in that case, if we have been known to go out and buy something,
Mhm.
but there's so little room in our suitcases that if you buy something, you have to get rid of something.
So
if
you bring your old clothes, and then when you get to Finland, make sure you get some cool cotton tops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we went to Finland on one of our long train trips.
Oh, what was that
It was
like?
really fun.
I want to get back for a second. Can you talk about the weather in Seville?
The weather in Seville is almost identical to Northern California, probably
Wow.
within 5 degrees,
Wow.
with one exception, and that's the summer. And we would never recommend anyone go to Seville in the summer, because
Okay.
the temperature can range anywhere from 90 to 115.
Oy. So your place
So-
has air conditioning?
Yeah.
We do have air conditioning, and there are more houses with air conditioners in Seville than with heat.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So everything shifts during the summer. So it's one of the reasons why people go out so late for dinner is
Mhm.
because from probably around 11 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, you don't see anybody on the street except
Yeah.
for some crazy tourists.
Okay, I heard you mention that. Now, I did want to ask for entertainment. Are you near any mountains, or what do you guys do when you're in Seville? I'm sure there's the arts. That much I know.
Yeah. We don't actually go out of Seville all that much. We did when we first got there. We had friends who were really into little excursions, Spanish friends, and we would jump in their car and off we go and explore this town or that town. And that was really fun. But now we are mostly, when we're in town, we just enjoy what the city has to offer. And it's a very rich city.
Okay.
It has every kind of entertainment that I can think of anyway.
Mhm.
My brother and his wife were in Seville. They came about a little over a year ago, about a month before the pandemic hit, kind of tough.
Mhm.
But they were, my brother is a musician, and for him, the availability of music was one of the main things. He was blown away by the music scene. I'm completely unmusical, so I can't comment on it.
Sure.
But he said he was really stunned. He kept going to concerts, open air concerts and jazz and, all sorts of things, little bars and big venues and everything, and just really was amazed by the quality. And then there's the whole flamenco stuff.
Mm.
Seville is one of the epicenters of the flamenco movement. and it is alive and well there. Before the pandemic, anyway, there was something like 60 or 80 schools teaching various aspects of flamenco music, dance,
My goodness.
the special clapping that they do.
Mhm.
And the shows are amazing, even in the tourist venues.
Okay.
The quality of the dancing is outstanding,
Yeah.
Oh,
almost universally. It's
Mhm.
very,
Wow.
very hard to find bad flamenco. People do it on the street to pick up a little extra cash. It may not be quite as good, but it's quite decent.
enjoyable. Yeah.
It's just lovely. There's a lot going on. There's museums, exhibitions.
There's a concert hall, opera, symphonies there.
So there's no shortage,
Far
obviously.
more than what you would find here. And the people go to these things. So the symphony is extremely popular in all age groups.
Oh,
Yeah, I remember when we were first there, we heard about this. Handel's Messiah was going to be played at the cathedral, and it was free. So we went really early because somebody said, oh, it's going to get really crowded. So we got seats. We met a friend there, and it got jammed. They shut the doors. The music started up, and in the back of the church, I could hear this pounding on the doors, this pounding. And I talked to somebody about it there, and she said, yes, those are the people that couldn't get in, and they were pounding at the door. Their displeasure. And I'm thinking, when was the last time a classical musical concert in a church had people pounding on the doors?
wow.
Furious because they couldn't get in. The Rolling Stones, sure, but Handel, I mean, it was really impressive.
Oh, that must have been nice.
And there was a period of time they put pianos around town. Remember that?
They do that from time to
Put
time.
outdoor pianos around the town, and people would come by and just play them.
So
Oh,
nice.
it's so cool.
There are a ton of street musicians, and they range from very good to very, very bad. I remember in this bar near our house, we were there late night once, and this old lady comes in. She had this sort of straggly hair, and she had a guitar with, I think, 2 strings, and she started plucking the strings and was wailing, and people showered her with money to get rid of her. And I guess that's her strategy.
They showered to get rid of her.
She didn't stay very long.
No, she was
But
there
she made
about
a lot of
5
money.
minutes, and she must have made $20.
Oh, that was smart of her.
Since you've been to Seville, do you get a lot of visitors? Like
We
friends
did.
from
We
home,
did.
family?
The first year we were there, we had visitors 50% of the days we were there.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Nothing we can do about it. Close friends and family, you just don't say no to.
Yeah.
Gil does.
Yeah, well, I can see why. Gradually it died. Everybody had their chance to come and visit us, and then they moved on to other things. Americans like new stuff. They don't like to repeat themselves. So it did get much less. We still get people in, but nothing like that pace. The first year it was insane. And it's difficult because they're on vacation and we're leading a life. So classes, in Spanish and painting and other things. And social.
It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah,
that's
really,
when I put out my mat that says "Go away."
Yes,
I'll put it in Spanish.
She has one.
I have a mat.
Amigos, yeah,
and a rock in the garden that says "Go away." Yes.
Well, I'm the oldest of 7, and I took care of a lot of people in my life. So this is my time. This is why we're going to go abroad, but we're not going to let anyone know where we are.
Well, we received advice the first time we were there that said, "Look, just get a really, really small apartment so they can't stay with you."
Oh, no, they'll stay.
This roomier apartment, so we just can't pull that off. In fact, it's inconvenient for me to have people sleeping in my office. Doesn't really cut it with family. So, kids get put in there and the adults, we work it out.
Yeah.
The one thing I should say about traveling, right, when you're over in Europe, and probably other places as well, is Karen and I have found that you should really travel with a purpose. That's why we did the comfort tour. That's why we're doing the happiness tour. To just go to the museum, one museum after another, as some friend of mine said, I'm churched out.
Yes.
Nice.
Who cares whether you see one more church?
Right.
But if you go to a place with a purpose, it opens up all sorts of doors for you that you would never expect. And people are more than welcoming. If you say, I'm here, I'd like to film you, or do you mind if I come back? Or could you tell me about your cooking? It changes everything. We encourage people, if they're going to, especially if you're going on a longer trip, go with a purpose. You'll find it much more enjoyable.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, it can be taking pictures of, I don't know, statues of saints with red hair. Right. It doesn't really matter. But something that will give you an excuse to talk to people. an excuse to get past the tourist track
Right.
and into something that's just a little bit more neighborhoody. It really doesn't take a huge amount of ingenuity. Everybody's got some interests, whether it's dogs or history, or it could be or food. Of course, everybody's interested in food, so that's the easiest one.
Right. Now, for the upcoming tour, is there a lot of planning because you're going to go through? See Richard's face.
Yes and no. Rich, would you like to take that one?
Let me take this one on. First of all, we travel very differently than most folks. We just go. We walk. We have a general idea what countries we want to go to, but we are fully prepared to adjust. We make no reservations in advance.
That was my question. I wanted to know. Yeah. Okay, go on.
We have never been in a town, and believe me, we have been in a lot of small towns where we didn't have a reservation or we got it 24 hours before we arrived. It gives you a lot more flexibility because you're not stuck in a schedule. You get to a place and you go, we went into Sarajevo and we were going to be there for a couple of days. We liked it so much, we stayed, almost 2 weeks?
Yeah.
This is a fabulous town. It wasn't like, okay, I can only be here for, 3 days because I have to move on to the next town. And so for us, we have friends of ours that want us to go with them, but they plan 11 months in advance and they know every restaurant, every hotel.
Oh, I can't stand that.
They're going to go to. We can't do that.
Right.
And so we tell people we are crap travelers to travel with. We just don't want to adhere to a schedule at all.
Yeah.
And we want to be on our own. So we say, look, we can go with you, but you have to understand we're going to take off.
I love that.
I love that too, because it takes a little tension off.
Yeah. Who wants that?
We go down to the train station maybe a day before and we buy a ticket because it's cheaper than buying it on the same day, or the bus. But outside of that, you explore the city in a very different way.
Right.
And
especially during retirement, you're not tied to any schedule, right? That's the beauty, that we won't have to do like tons of online research. What hotel or is this place okay to stay overnight in? And okay, this is so good.
You'll always find a place to stay. I don't care what town, what city you're in. There's always a hotel. It might not be the top of the line.
Yeah, it may be a little more expensive than you want to stay in, or a little crummier than you want to stay in. But you're not going to be sleeping in a ditch. I have friends who honestly seem to think that if they don't have reservations well in advance, they're going to be sleeping, in the park or something.
Right.
They're not. There's always a hotel.
Okay.
Well, it did happen to me once in Honolulu, Hawaii. I was, I think, 19. My sister works for an airlines. She had a free pass and it was getting the end of the year and somebody had to use it. So I went to Hawaii. There were no hotels available.
Oh my God. So what'd you do?
I was going to sleep on the beach and then I saw interesting people on the beach. And I remembered I had a cousin. He was there with his then wife. He had been in the military. She was still in the military and he lived there. And I ended up getting his number and calling him up.
Wow,
and
lucky.
He let me stay at his house. Thank you, Donald.
God bless Donald.
But nowadays, Airbnbs and all that stuff and hostels.
Yeah,
we
that's true.
stayed in hostels. Had some of the greatest times, sitting around in a community dinner, what they've been doing, young people, in their
And I think the hostels abroad are different.
We found that most hostels, they're still really basic, but a lot of hostels have at least one room that is a private room with a double queen size bed and a minuscule bathroom. Not much more than staying in the dormitory style rooms.
Right.
Yet the fun of staying in a hostel is the conversations.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's unbelievable the people that go through, and it's all ages now.
Right.
It's a much broader thing. When I was young and hitchhiking around Europe, very different scene.
Yeah.
But now it's a much broader spectrum of people, but it's still people who are not timid travelers and they're not first-time travelers usually.
Right.
Usually people who have had a little bit of experience and want to see something that's a little bit different than they can find at the Hilton. Not that there's anything wrong with the Hilton, and I have been known to go to the Hilton. I like stuff that's a little more colorful and local, and every once in a while we get to a hostel, always have tons of stories, or guest houses. Strange little guest houses.
Yeah.
Do you still have to do chores at hostels?
Chores? No, we did not.
No, you don't have to do that.
You have to do that anymore.
That's called prison.
Yeah. A real dormitory.
All right. So, gosh, we've taken up so much of your time. Is there anything that we may have left out that you'd like to share with our audience? This has been wonderful, by the way.
I think the one thing, and I mentioned it earlier, is you have to be patient and you have to be flexible. And if you can do those two things, you'll enjoy yourself far more. And, we've seen Americans come over and say, well, that's not the way we do it in our country. Well, that's because it's not your country.
Right. Good point.
It's their country, and you're a guest there.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so you should behave yourself like a guest. I was just reading this week of these two kids that got convicted in Italy of murdering the policeman. I don't know whether you saw that.
Oh, I haven't seen that. No.
They were involved in a drug deal, and the cops came up, and the one kid stabbed the cop and killed him, and
Oh my
they
goodness.
were just sentenced to life in prison.
They're from 2 towns over.
Yeah, they're from Mill
We are
Valley.
right here. Yeah, Mill
Wow.
Valley is a very upper crust neighborhood. Very,
Mhm.
very nice place.
So, I mean,
Craziness.
they were trying to do drugs, and I know that happens,
Mm-hmm.
but you forget that you're there as a guest, and you're also there as an ambassador
Yes,
representing your country.
exactly.
And so you should behave like that. Our experience has always been people are more than welcoming if you're patient and you're respectful of them.
Great.
Well, I would just add, I would suggest that people try not to take themselves too seriously.
Yes.
Because your life as a person in a foreign country in particular is going to be so full of bloopers and pratfalls and misunderstandings and miscommunications and doing things the wrong way and showing up in the wrong clothes and whatever. And nobody else is going to mind nearly as much as you do. So you just have to learn to laugh about it and accept that, okay, I guess I blew that one, and move on without a lot of fuss and bother. This is your life now.
Yeah.
And gradually you will figure out, at least most of the time, how to avoid making completely idiotic mistakes. But life is just full of this stuff, and you really need to accept this is who you are and this is your life, and it's okay. It's okay
Yes.
not to be perfect.
I love that.
Wisdom. So Karen and Richard, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And it sounds like you have much more in terms of travel. And we're going to be following you, Karen, on your blog. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much. That was,
Thank you so much for your
you guys
time.
You both were really great. Sometimes we get couples and one's better than the other. You were both great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You
Thank
guys are really
thank you.
fun to talk with. I really enjoy the conversation.
Okay. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Take care. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you know someone who's relocated for retirement and wishes to share their story with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is gg@retirethere.com. Our website is retirethere.com, and you may follow us on Twitter @retirethere_. Now, if you've liked our show, please subscribe and rate it in Apple Podcasts. In the meantime, be well.